Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to our Direction First webinar with myself, Tom De Ruyck, Head of Research Communities at Insights Consulting. What will we do today? Well, a couple of months ago, in September, I gave a presentation both in Sydney and in Melbourne. In Sydney at the Direction First event, and in Melbourne at the annual conference of the Australian Market Research Association. That presentation, that's the one that I will give today, the Consumer Consulting Board. And I'm very happy that Erica van Leven, Managing Director from Direction First, invited me today to present this one to you. So we will talk about communities for the next 40 minutes, market research, online communities, or consumer consulting boards, as we like to call them at Insights Consulting. And I will try to show you how those online customer communities have the power to really reshape your business. But first, let's take a look at what has happened the last 5 years in the world of marketing and business. Because let's face it, the past 5 years were absolutely crazy. Why were they absolutely crazy? Because a lot of things have changed both in the world of consumers and in the business world. Let's first take a look at the consumer world. What has happened over there? Well, through social media, I think ordinary consumers have gained the power to make or break brands. We've all seen more positive or more negative examples in the past couple of years, but I think the bottom line is that through social media, consumers have gained tremendous power that makes that nowadays a marketing person doesn't have full control anymore about what's being said about his products and or his brands. So we have to deal, let's say, with empowered consumers. Not only in the sense that people talk about products and brands, no, they also want to talk with companies about their products and about their brands. In a recent study that we launched, our social media around the world study, we see that 4 out of 5 consumers want to have a say in the future of the brands they love, the brands they like. So today, as marketing people, but also as researchers, we really have to deal with a consumer that is talking about us and wants to talk with us. That's the biggest change that was going on in the consumer world. Let's now dive into the business world. I think if you look at the business world, this quote or this song text from the Daft Punk song illustrates it very well. Harder, better, faster, stronger. That's what is happening in the business world. Harder due to the economical situation. Better, even though there is that economical situation, people still expect that companies do a better job every single day. Faster, everything goes faster nowadays, especially if you look at the competitive landscape. People that are not your competitor today can be your competitor tomorrow. Look at what has happened in the market research industry with the entry of Google and their Google surveys. And stronger, because if you live in such a business world, you need to make yourself stronger as a company every single day. So we all live in a tough environment because the consumer has changed and the business world we are operating in is harder than ever before. So what do companies need to do in order to survive in this new environment, but also in order to be one of the winners of tomorrow? I think 2 things are important. Companies today need to be open and agile. They need to embrace the empowered consumer and work together with that empowered consumer. Listen to what they have to say. Co-create with them. And they also need to be agile because in a tough business environment, you need the ability to move fast, to react quickly on what is going on, both in the consumer world and in the business world. Okay, companies need to become open and agile, but that's very scary. Why is that so scary? Because in the last 5 years, we have talked a lot about the change that was going on, but I think almost any company has done anything about it. So if we will do a reality check, we will see that almost no company today is already open and agile enough in order to be one of the winners of tomorrow. Let's do that quick reality check. First of all, open. I don't think a lot of companies are open today. Still, a lot of companies are communicating in a one-way kind of formula with their audiences, not in a two-way kind of dialogue. That's the reality. If we look at Agile, we have the same kind of thing. Companies work still in projects, in one-shot kind of actions. They have research projects, they have marketing campaigns. There is not something continuous, and they are organized in silos. A lot of companies are organized in departments and they work in some kind of separate way from one another. If you work in projects, if you're still organized in departments, it's very hard to be really agile, to react quickly on what's going on. So that means we know that as a company, if we don't want to miss out on the biggest opportunity ever to outperform the competition, that we need to become open and agile, but it's not reality today. So who is going to help us to reach those two goals? Well, it will not be, let's say, very expensive consultants and advisors that are going to rescue you. No, we at InSites Consulting and at Direction First, we believe that it's the consumer that is going to help you. You need to hire the consumer as a consultant because they are probably the best consultants there are for hire for your company. And I will give 3 reasons why we really believe that you need to bring the consumer into your company to be one of the winners of tomorrow. I will give 3 reasons why we believe that your customers, your consumers, are probably the best consultants there are for hire. The first example is a rather personal example. The cookie you see on the screen, that's one of my favorites. I'm already a fan of the brand since I was probably a kid of 3 years old. Meaning that I probably also survived more than 10 generations of brand managers of the brand, because typically a marketing person switches companies or brands every 2 to 3 years. This means that I'm probably more aware of the kind of history of the brand than the current brand manager. And that's typically for fans. They are already so long with the brand that they really know a lot of the brand, that they really almost live the values of the brand. They know better than anyone what the brand really stands for. A second reason why we think that consumers are great consultants for companies is that they show extraordinary engagement. And an example that spontaneously pops up into my mind is one of a community we did 2 years ago for Ben & Jerry's. Ben & Jerry's, the ice cream brand, where we worked together with extreme brand fans. And one of the things that was striking to us is that although they were extreme brand fans, they were very critical for the brand and for the brand managers. If they did something wrong, they really were very angry. Why? Because they want their brand to perform well. So consumers, people who like your brand, who are into your product category, they not only know a lot about the history of the brand or the category, but they also show really a lot of engagement. And finally, I really think that they are the only consultants in the world who are always right. Why? Because they are the ones who buy your products. They are the ones who make that you still have a business. So 3 reasons why we really believe that consultants are probably the best consultants there are for hire, and why we think that they can help you to become an open and agile company. Because that's what we are going to do by bringing them into our companies. So let's solve the first issue. How can they help us to become an open company? Well, we are going to set up a consumer consulting board of 150 consumers maximum. And they are going to help us to make better decisions. So what's a consumer consulting board or a research community? Well, it's a group of people that we bring together on a closed online platform for a longer period of time, weeks, months, sometimes even years. How can we compare it with the more traditional ways of being open, listening, working together with consumers, being focus groups? Well, there are a couple of things in the characteristics that are the same and a couple of things that are different, and that's where the power lies. What's the same? It's closed. It's also a closed platform, a closed room where you work together with people, a closed online environment where you work together with people, meaning that your secrets are still safe. What are the differences? Well, we work with more people over a longer period of time, meaning that more people, more ideas, opinions coming in, clashes of ideas, which leads to richness, of course, and over a longer period of time we are going to work together with a larger group of people, meaning that we can think and rethink things, that we can work together with them over a longer period of time, that we can follow them, and so on and so on, also leading to an additional richness. So that's a consumer consulting board, and that's how we can compare it with more traditional ways of listening. So what are we going to do with that consumer consulting board? Well, we are going to work together with them, ask them for feedback, ask them for input, ask them for inspiration. We listen, we co-create, we collaborate. Then we are open. But how are we also going to become agile by having that consumer consulting board, by bringing the consumer into our company? Well, we need to use that every single day for almost every single business question we have across all departments of the company. If we do that, if we make the collaboration structural, if we do conduct structural collaboration, we are not only open, but we are also agile, because we have then the input, the inspiration, the feedback of the consumers at our fingertips 24 hours a day, 7 by 7. Then we are open, we embrace the consumer world, and we are agile. We can move very fast. We can almost make better decisions because we listen faster. Okay, is this new? Yes, it is. And on the other hand, it isn't, because we are already doing this in Europe, in the rest of the world, and also in Australia with Direction First. And a nice example of a project that we recently did and that we presented at the ASOMAR Congress in Atlanta is a case we did with Heineken, where we co-created the Club of Tomorrow with designers from all over the world and young clubbers from all over the world in a project that was about a year long, and where we involved all departments of Heineken, or at least a lot, because the design department was involved, the marketing department was involved, the PR and communication department was involved, the product development department was involved. So we really worked on a big project with consumers over a longer period of time, and we involved a lot of departments within the company. So this was really a great example of structural collaboration. But a lot of people, when I present this, come to me and say, well, Tom, that's great structural collaboration, having consumer input and inspiration at your fingertips all the time. But isn't it something only for the big companies like Heineken, Heinz, IKEA, and so on, all those companies you work for? And then my answer is, yes, of course. If you want to make this big from the start, it will be a serious investment. But why not think big, have that end goal of structural collaboration and always on into the back of your mind, and start small. Start with a pilot project of 3 weeks with 50 people to try it, to convince people internally, to have buy-in, to see what it brings to your company, and move on from that pilot project to something bigger, to something more structural. And that's what a lot of our clients do. They start with a 3-week community with 50 people as a pilot project and move on from there. Make it bigger from time to time. And that's, I think, the right way to do it, because this kind of way of working, structural collaboration with consumers, it's something that needs to grow within your company. You cannot bring it in as a revolution. No, make it an evolution. That will work much better. Another misunderstanding is that this way of working is only for companies that have a lot of innovation projects, because co-creation most of the time is associated with crowdsourcing and new product development. That's partly true, but it's also not, because it's much more than that. You can almost use it for all the business or marketing issues you have. We'll give a couple of examples. For Danone, in the UK, we did a big insighting project to get under the skin of young moms and how it is to feed their babies, and what the kind of frustrations and the kind of problems are they encounter when feeding their infants during those first weeks. For KLM Air France, the airline company, with frequent flyers, we ideated around concepts for people being in transfer, to spend their time in a better way, to make sure that period is not stressful anymore. For Vodafone, in the whole of Europe, we tested new apps they have created before the launch, both in terms of the product, in terms of debugging it, but also in terms of the positioning and the communication that would go with the launch. And for eBay, we optimized their existing platforms in a couple of countries. So that means that such a community, such a consumer consulting board is more than innovation. It's also about generating insights, being inspired about a target group or by a target group. It's about developing new products and services, but also brand strategies and advertising campaigns. It's about launching new products and having some kind of 360-degree check before the launch. And it's also about optimizing existing products and services. So we have now seen why communities are so relevant today. We have seen why it's important for companies to be open and agile in order to survive in this new world and in order to be one of the winners of the future. We've also seen that if you want to become open and agile, you need to bring in the consumer into your company. And we have also seen that such a consumer consulting board is something that you need to start small with to end big, to end with structural collaboration, and that it can really serve all the departments within your company that deal with consumers, and that can really serve or can be used for all business objectives and business issues. All right, but how are we going to run such a community? That's of course a very important question. How are we going to make that happen? I will answer a couple of questions in the next part. With how many people are we going to work? Which type of people are we going to use or going to recruit? What's the profile? How are we going to create engagement? How are we going to keep their engagement over time? And how are we going to get the maximum out of them? All those questions and the answers I'm going to give on them are based on more than 6 years on research that we have done within the R&D department at Insights Consulting about the dynamics of research communities. So the first question and the first answer. Who's on board? Who are the people we work with in such a community? Well, our research has shown that the people that are the high performers in the communities, the one that participate the most and the ones that come up with the best ideas and the best insights are always people who show brand and or topic identification. That means that it are people that are a fan of the brand or that are more into the topic than just the average consumer. This means that we are not working with a representative sample, but it's logic, it's qualitative research, it's about gathering all the opinions, of course. But we are working with people, and I like to call that, who are interested in what we are going to do and have something interesting to tell. So it are the people that want to work with us for a couple of weeks, months, sometimes years, and it are, of course, the people that will push our thinking forward. So I think that's a good thing that we can work with those people. And we see that in all the projects that we do, that they can really inspire the people within a company. They really bring something new to the table. But how many people do we work? Well, we always work with between 50 and 150 people. Our 3-week projects, the kind of pilot project that most of our clients start with, are with 50 people. And the maximum amount of people that we work with is 150. Why is that the case? We'll give a couple of reasons. First of all, we know out of our research that if we ask a question on the community, we need about 30 answers to make a decent qualitative analysis. 30 answers of a quarter to a third of a page long. We also know that after the 30th answer, we have the kind of saturation effect that you also see in other forms of qualitative research. That means that if we have 30 answers, we almost have enough. That's the first thing. We also know that people participate in waves in a community. If they participate for 3 weeks, they will participate very intensively. They will almost answer every single question. But if you make the community longer, for months and years, we see that wave effect coming in much harder. We see that sometimes people are more active, sometimes they are less active, just because they have busier or less busier periods also in their professional and private life. So that means that you need to compensate for the waste, for the inactivity of certain people. That's why we have 50 people in a 3-week community, but we make it bigger towards 150 people when we have a community of 3 months and more. Just to compensate for that effect, to make sure that we always have at least 30 answers. But we don't have like 300 or 500 people in a community, because we know that if we would do that, we would just add conversations to the pile of the conversation, but it would not bring in something new. It would just be generating conversations for the sake of the conversation. So that's why we have between 50 and 150. But why is 50 the absolute maximum? Well, because of the fact that we know out of our experience that if you go beyond 150, that it becomes very hard, very difficult for both the moderator and the people in the community to get connected with all the people, to know all the people, to have conversations with all of the people. And especially for the moderator, that's very important, because you still need to be able to ask probing questions, to go in depth on certain elements. So we work with between 50 and 150 people of a very specific profile. People who are interested and interesting for various reasons. What are we going to do with them? We are not going to just throw them on an online platform and get them started. No. We are first going to give them a briefing in kickoff sessions. Why do we do that? Because we know that if you do that, you boost engagement from the start. Otherwise, people for the first week, they are just a little bit lost on the platform. What am I doing here? Who else is here? How do I use this platform? And what's the goal of this whole project? Well, to make sure everybody knows those things, we do those kickoff sessions in small groups of about 20 people in 30-minute online chat sessions. And you have to just compare it with the kind of kickoffs you do for important projects within your company. You never do an important project within your company without a kickoff meeting with all the people involved. So why would you not do it with this kind of part-time employees, part-time consultants to your company, those people in your community, in your consumer consulting board? What do we explain to the people during the session? Well, a couple of things. We say who we are. We say who the client is. We say what the goal of the project is. We explain them roughly what we are going to talk about in the next couple of weeks or months. We say them what the topic guide will be all about. We ask them what they want to talk about during the community. And most of the time, that's sometimes more interesting, more consumer relevant than what we or the marketing team has come up with. And of course, we tell them what the incentive will be. And that's an important thing, the incentive, because it's more an intrinsic motivation than an extrinsic motivation. We give those people 30 euros or the equivalent in Australian dollars to be part of that kickoff session because we find it very, very important that they are just there, that they know what we are going to do. And afterwards, they receive from us a lot of feedback on a weekly basis, and that's what keeps them going. And from time to time, a nice gift. For example, we have a community for Heinz, and every quarter in that Heinz community, what do the people receive as an incentive? A basket full of the products that they work together on with us. That's the type of incentive we then give. So if we have that, we have the right amount of people with the right profile, and they are super engaged after the kickoff session. When they come onto the platform, we immediately get them going. But then we have that topic guide. We ask questions on the community platform. How to make that still interesting over time. How to keep people's engagement over time. Well, we apply gamification to our research communities, to our consumer consulting boards. Gamification, it's one of the buzzwords both in marketing and research. How do we apply them, and what does it bring to the table if you do that? Well, we apply gamification on 4 different levels. First of all, on the question level. Secondly, on the individual level. Thirdly, on the group level. And last but not least, on the community level. I will give examples of each of them, and you will see how it can make your topic guide more engaging, more interesting, and more fun for the people to participate. And I will also explain what the effect is on the answers, the number of answers, and the richness of the answers. So, on the question level, an example of what we do there is from a community, global community for MTV networks. Normally, we just ask a question. If we gamify it, we make the question a challenge. Example, global community, 100 youngsters from the 10 coolest, hottest cities in the world. We wanted to know what are the hotspots, the cool hotspots in your city. We could just have asked it, but we didn't do that. We made it a challenge. We said, hi guys, make 10 teams, 10 people from the 10 different cities, and we are going to organize a battle of the cities. You all need to come up with as much cool places in your city to prove that your city is the hottest in the world. And the jury at MTV will decide which city is officially the coolest city on this planet. By doing that, by not making it a question but a challenge, we got much more and much richer answers. So it's a very simple technique, but it can do so much for your engagement in the community. Individual level, we give people badges. Badges not for something they did in terms of quantity, but badges for something they did in terms of quality. For example, in the Heinz community, we have created a team that was working on the shape of the Heinz ketchup bottle, the future shape of the Heinz ketchup bottle. That's of course something very cool to work on. So we have given the people who were part of the team a badge that they were part of the team that did that. We gave them some kind of sign of the achievement that they have reached. And forever it will be on their profile in the community, and they can also talk about it to the outside world, giving them some kind of status. It's almost like in the army where you get a medal for a great fight you have survived or you have won. On the group level then, what we sometimes do in our communities is organize battles of arguments between two different groups who think differently about something. We've done that in a community we did for Unilever Global R&D, where we organized a battle between 3 different teams, and they had to come up with as much ideas as possible. And the winning team unlocked a secret room in the community where they could see the new Magnum ice cream. So it's about making things more fun, making things more challenging, making things more attractive. And finally, on the community level, one of the things we did in the Heineken community that I was already talking about is that we said to the people in the community, if you reach more than 2,000 comments by the end of week 2 of the community, we will already show you first sketches from the design team. First sketches of that club of the future. And of course, they reached the 2,000 comments because they wanted to see the sketches. So, gamification on 4 levels. What does it bring if you gamify your community? Well, we did research on that. We compared gamified and non-gamified communities. And what we see is that in a gamified community, we have up to 7 times more on-topic arguments. What do we mean with that? Not 7 times more answers, but 7 times more richness in the answers. So what does gamification of your community do? It makes people think harder. They just spend more time answering. It gives you additional richness. But of course, qualitative research is not only about thinking harder, it's also about thinking different, thinking more emotionally, thinking more creatively, thinking into a different context. So we also have all kinds of techniques to reach those goals. Techniques that are translations from more traditional qualitative projective techniques, but also a lot of new techniques that we can bring in due to the power of the online environment that we are in. I will give an example of a technique that really shows the beauty also of a market research online community, Consumer Consulting Board. It's an example from a community we run for Chiquita. And Chiquita was launching their smoothie offering, and they wanted to have a communication campaign that was highlighting the benefits, the mental and physical benefits of eating fruit, or in this case, drinking fruit. So we came up with a 3-week community, 50 people, 25 of them were already eating a lot of fruit and were living the healthy lifestyles. 25 others were living unhealthy lifestyles and were not eating fruit at all. 3 weeks. First week was about healthy lifestyles, discussing that, and what the role of eating fruit or drinking fruit was in having a healthy lifestyle. The kind of questions were discussed there that you would normally also ask in a focus group. Second week, we thought, well, let's do some kind of scientific experiments. Let's ask the 2 groups in the community to swap lives. So the ones that are already eating a lot of fruit, stop eating fruit. The ones that were not eating fruit at all, 3 times that week, we sent a man to their doorstep with a fruit basket full of fresh fruit and smoothies. And we said, eat as much as possible. And during that week, during that scientific experiment, we asked them to fill out short surveys about their physical and mental well-being every single day. And we also asked them to keep a diary. Of course, giving us a lot of rich information about what it does to people if they change their behavior. Already a lot of rich insights into the physical and mental benefits of eating, drinking fruit. But what was most interesting, what is what was happening in the third week, where we organized the battle of arguments, remember from the gamification part, between the two groups. And it was a very rich discussion. Why? Because both groups had seen how it was on the other side. So very interesting. And really a technique that is totally new, that you can only do due to the fact that we work with a longitudinal research method. And it really shows the beauty of working with more people over a longer period of time. So a lot of richness in your community due to the fact that you work with engaged people, that you let them think harder and different. But we not only do that from behind the desktops, we do that anywhere, anytime, because we have a mobile application that makes that people can participate to the community wherever they are. What does that bring to the table? This is, by the way, a screenshot from our mobile application while we were conducting a project for Campbell's in Australia about eating habits and eating behavior. It was a paper, by the way, presented at that latest conference in Melbourne from the Australian Market Research Association. So feel free to ask the paper to me or, of course, to Erica and the people from Direction First. So what does it bring to the table? And it's also outlined in that paper. Well, it brings to the table more personal and contextual information. People participate not more, they not bring in more data, they bring in different data, more pictures, more videos, more in-the-moment thoughts that are very personal and that are very contextual. In that example for Campbell's, we could literally see what was on the plates in the morning, during lunch, in the evening, with whom they were eating, what the kind of special emotional moments were they were sharing, and so on and so on. So a lot of rich personal and contextual information. And it's not about only participating anywhere, anytime in the real world, but also in the virtual world. We can also integrate our community into a Facebook page. It's still a closed online environment, but it's integrated into your Facebook page. And we already did that for the television show The Voice in order to make sure that we could capture like feedback while the show was going on, because people will not use the laptops or their mobile phones, but we know to take part in a community, but they will use it to be part of the conversation about the show on social media. So if we are part of social media, while the show is going on, we will capture all the findings in the heat of the moment. So that's why we integrated it into Facebook. So if we work with the right amount of people, the right type of people, and we really make them engaged and keep their engagement, we have a lot of rich insights, a lot of rich data. Now it's about getting the most out of the data. How are we going to do that? Well, by great, good qualitative analysis and interpretation by us, of course, but also by involving consumers as co-researchers. Because we thought if we say to companies that they need to work together with consumers, why would we as researchers not work together with our participants as well in order to do better things? Why would we not collaborate with them? And that's what we do in order to get more out of the data. We work together with consumers, with community members for moderation, analysis and interpretation, and also reporting. First example, co-moderation. That's where we have a community member as a co-pilot on a topic, meaning just like in an airplane, they can also ask questions to the people in that specific topic. They help us to probe, they help us to moderate. What do we see? They ask different follow-up questions than we do. They fill our blind spots. That's the beauty of working together with community members as co-moderators. Next example is crowd interpretation, using a part of the community, a couple of people in your community, to help you to analyze the data. Because in every piece of research, especially in qualitative research, you have those pieces of data that you don't know everything about, that you don't know what to do with it sometimes, because for the simple reason that you're not part of the target group. And it's logic. We can be very young as researchers, but we can never be the same as a 16-year-old kid grown up in New York in an MTV project. We are never 100% part of their environment and of their contexts. So that's why we sometimes don't get everything. So that's why we involve a couple of people from the community that volunteered from it to help us to analyze those raw pieces of data that we curated that we don't understand. We call that crowd interpretation, and we do that in a game. We play some kind of interpretation game with some people in the community to make sure we get the most out of those curated pieces of data that we think are very important, but that we can get for the full 100%. What does it bring to the table if you involve participants in the analysis of some parts of the data? Well, they get up to 40% additional insights that we didn't find. So that means that we are very complementary. They don't take over our jobs, absolutely not, but they help us to do a better job. They find things that we didn't find. Last example is using participants in reporting. This is an example from a community that we did for Philips in China. It was about sleeping problems among business people. And one thing that we know about Chinese culture is that people don't always say everything that's on their mind because of cultural reasons. How did we overcome that? How did we make sure that we don't have social desirable answers all the time, that there is no group pressure all the time? Well, we had community 3 weeks, 50 people, and next to that we had 10 people who were not participating in the community, who had the same profile, but they were not participating in the community. They were just observing. And afterwards, we were presenting our first conclusions to them, and we asked them to shoot on it, to bring in nuance, to say where there were cultural desirable answers or socially desirable answers. What was the effect of that? Well, that they said that some of our conclusions were just not 100% true, that some of the answers were there because of social desirable reasons. It made that we positioned the brand in the right way. And I would compare this last one as just giving a dry run of a very important presentation for your colleagues within your company. But now you're doing it in front of a group of community participants. And they say where you were right, where you were wrong, to make sure that you will do a better job on the final presentation. So, last bit of the presentation, it's about the pilot project, because we now know why is a community so important for your company? Why do you need it? What can you use it for? How do you set it up? But let's go back to what I started with. Let's think big, but start small. Let's start with a pilot project and apply everything we just saw on a community project with 50 people for the course of 3 weeks of time. How do you choose your pilot project? I always advise clients to take something that is high on the agenda, but that you don't know a lot of. That means that you can make a lot of progress from the start, and that a lot of people will be involved, a lot of people will see the project, and you will also inspire a lot of people. What is also important, if you have defined your pilot project, that you're very honest with yourself. Don't do this because you think it's cool. Do this because you think it will bring something to the table within your company. So it's very important for that pilot project that you define your KPIs, that you measure them, and if you are successful in reaching them, that you celebrate your success. And one of the most important things in order to be successful with a pilot project is communicating very well, both to the internal world and to the external world. Let's take a look at both aspects, because they are really important if you want to make your pilot project success, and they are one of the most underestimated things in market research in general, and especially in the reporting of results. At Insights and Direction First, we have a a three-step kind of procedure of communicating research results. Engage, inspire, activate. Engage is about confronting the people who will be part of your workshop up front with the consumer world and with their own knowledge. Inspire is about presenting them the insights in a very inspiring and entertaining, engaging way. And activate is about making sure that actually something happens with the research results and that the research has some kind of afterlife. I will briefly give a couple of examples of things we do in each of the three phases to make sure that the research results live within the company. The first one is an example of engage. One of the things we do is we have quotes within the company. We have a consumer wall to show how consumers really are, within the lobby of the company, for example, or a place around the coffee corner where a lot of people come. But something else we do before people go to a workshop is play some kind of online quiz of 10 questions about consumers and about the consumer world. What do you get if you play a quiz already about part of the results of what they were going to see in the real workshop? Well, you see that some people only have a 4 out of 10, and what it does to them is it creates positive disruption. All of a sudden, they know when they are confronted with the consumer world that they don't know everything, that maybe they don't know a lot about the topic. So it makes them very curious to go to that presentation. All of a sudden, they realize that they better go, that they better pay attention, that they better don't play on their Blackberries or iPhones. So it makes that people are curious, are engaged, are interested in going to that workshop. Inspire is about, of course, just presenting great insights in a great and engaging way. But sometimes your audience is too big, like the example of Unilever R&D, where we had to present to a whole plant, a whole global R&D plant of Unilever, 500 people. So we didn't present, no, we have set up a consumer news website. A consumer news website on which for the whole course of the community, so 3 weeks, we presented the people, the 500 people, with 2 consumer insights every single day in the form of a news article. So a great way to really present research results to a big audience. Another example can be that you need to present your research results to a very different audience, like in the example of Heineken, a very creative audience. In order to present to them, we created an iPad application with 6 sceneries that was guiding them through a night out that the youngsters in the community had, with each time like 5 very interesting insights formulated into a quote and with a design action. If you want to go and look through that application, you can also watch it on your laptops or on your desktops. It's freely available on nightlifejourney.com. And finally, after we have engaged them before the presentation, we have presented them with the insights, we also need to make sure the research results are used and the research results have some kind of afterlife. Of course, we organize brainstorms during the workshops we give. If it's, for example, about innovation, we do concept writing exercises with the people in the workshop. But sometimes you need something else. You need something more. And what we did in the MTV project in order to inspire the MTV executives in some kind of ongoing way is that based on the hotspots the people from the 10 cool cities shared in the community, we made small city guides. So that if those executives are in one of those world cities like London, like New York, like Sydney, of course, and they want to go out, they want to go shopping, they want to eat somewhere, that they can go and eat in the places where their target audience, Generation Y, is eating, living, shopping, going out. So that makes that the community has some kind of afterlife. So what does it bring to the table? If you not just present your research results for 2 hours in a PowerPoint presentation, but you do something before, you do something afterwards, and you think very wisely about how to make it as engaging as possible, well, we see in the research that we have done about it that the research is used more. The research has more impact on the day-to-day decisions of the company. And you create some kind of consumer feeling within the company because you are really confronted with consumers. You are really inspired by consumers that makes that your gut feeling turns into some kind of consumer feeling. That's about internal communication. I said a pilot project will be successful if you communicate about it very well, internally and externally. Yes, you can also communicate about your consumer consulting board, even about your pilot project, to the external world. You can talk about the fact that you're doing it, the process. You can talk about the outcomes, what you have created together with consumers, and about the learnings, what you have learned from the community. If you're interested in papers, we have all kinds of examples of companies that have done this very well. So, we have talked about communities, what they are, what to use them for. We have talked about how to run them. We have talked about pilot projects and how to make them successful. And communication both internally and externally will be key. Let's talk about the final thing. What's the impact of having a consumer consulting board, of doing that pilot project and making it bigger afterwards? Well, we see impact for the clients that we are already working for a longer period on 3 levels. The product and services level, the brand level, and the company level. On a product level, we see, and we have tested that in concept tests, in ID screeners, in sales figures, we have seen that companies that have a community create more consumer relevant products and services that are more successful in the market. They are not more unique, they are not more breakthrough, but they are so relevant that they have higher buying intentions, that they have higher sales figures. That's the first thing. Secondly, on a brand level, if you communicate to the outside world that you, as a company, work together with consumers, we see that your brand gets a lot of additional associations like open, genuine, consumer relevant, contemporary. So you get some kind of humanization of the brand. Finally, what does it do with your company and the way it's organized? We see that indeed you become more agile. More agile in the sense that you can take decisions in a better way and a faster way. Within 48 hours, you can take decisions because you have consumer input and inspiration and feedback at your fingertips. And we also see that companies that have a community make decisions faster because they are not organized in silos anymore, but in some kind of task force around the community. And it's not a hidden agenda of a department that makes what will happen. It's the consumer. The consumer is really at the center, so the community makes that the noses are into the same directions much faster. So that's what a community will bring to your company on 3 levels. And we have also talked about you can already make a start with that with a pilot project. How now to move from that target pilot project towards the end goal of structural collaboration? Well, it's about making it an evolution, not a revolution. It's making that project turns into another one, or that you can make that project a bigger one. We have a lot of clients that reactivate their existing communities or that make their existing communities bigger. Not for one product category, but for 2. Not for one brand, but for a couple of brands, for example. But the one thing we want to end up with, although we start small, we want to think big and we want to end big. We want structural collaboration. We want that everybody has a piece of the pie or a piece of the pizza in the end. We want that in the end, everybody within the company is using the community almost every single day for almost every business issue they have. And if we have reached that goal, I think it's finally time to have somebody in the boardroom that can be the advocate of the consumer, the chief consumer officer, who can really have impact not only on the day-to-day decisions, on the short-term and mid-term strategies of the company, but also on the long-term strategies of the company. That's the end of my presentation. I think the time to make a start with this, with communities, with consumer consulting boards is now. We have seen during my presentation, I think, that consumers are ready for it, that we have the technology to make it happen, and I hope that in my presentation I shared some of the recipe to make your community consumer consulting board a success from a methodological point of view, but also how to make a start in terms of a pilot project, how to make it grow into that final end goal. So we'd say thank you very much, both in my name and of course in the name of Erica and the people at Direction First and at InSites Consulting for listening to this webinar. If you have questions, feel free to drop me a tweet, to drop me an email, and of course to talk to Erica and her team. Thank you very much and have a nice evening. Okay, there's still time for some questions, I see. The first question, do all the people have to be in the same country or can they be spread across geographic regions? Yes, that's absolutely possible. We have done communities in English with people from more than 20 countries, for example. So as long as the people can speak the same language, it's possible to bring them into the same community. So absolutely no problem. So language is more important than geographical boundaries. Another question, it's a question about ballpark costs. What's the cost for a community with 50 people and 3 weeks? I will give it in euros. Feel free to drop a line towards Erica and her team for the price in Australian dollars, but I think the average community, it of course all depends on what you want, what you need, is about 40,000 euros, but it totally depends on what you want and need. A question by Adam. What do you think are the biggest barriers stopping more clients from commissioning online communities? Well, Adam, we have done research about that. We have done interviews with C-level executives from about 15 large companies. If you want, you can have that paper, and we found 5 reasons. The first one is budget. The second one is they think it's not for all objectives. The third one is they think it's not for their industry. The fifth one is they think it's nothing for their organization, or they don't have the organizational power. And the fifth one is culture. But in that same paper, for each of those barriers, we give a way to overcome them. And I think in general, it's about thinking big but starting small. If you start small, you have everything under control and you can create buy-in internally to make sure that everybody is on board. So that's why I think it's better to make it an evolution rather than a revolution, and not bring in an ongoing community from the start, because that will be much more difficult if you don't have the right organization or culture or financial support from the first start. So it's really about that principle of the pilot project that will work very well also to overcome all those barriers. Fourth question by Clarissa. Have you any experience of running these boards in Asian markets, notably China, Japan, and Southeast Asia? Yes, Clarissa, we have. I have given an example of the project that we have done for Philips in China, but we also done projects for IKEA in Asia. We are now running a big global project in more than 18 countries for Red Bull, where I think 4 Asian markets are included, and we all do them in the language of the local people. So that's definitely possible. So that were all for questions. So now it's really time to say goodbye. So have a nice evening, and please feel free to get in contact with the people at Direction First or with me. And I really hope that you can all make a start with consumer consulting boards through a pilot project. Bye bye and have a great day.